Good morning, folks. Welcome back to the Philosophy for Philistines channel, also known as Politics for Plebeians, with your host, this guy, Bill Reimer. I'm going to speak to you off the cuff this morning, a little more off the cuff than I did yesterday. For those of you who did not see, hear, or read yesterday's blog and podcast, I encourage you to do so. It is entitled Regarding Legacy Media and Polyev Derangement Syndrome. When I lived in Norway from late 2012 through to the spring of 2015, I encountered an incredible collectivist mindset, and it bothered me. My wife was able to help regarding the postmodern and cultural Marxist ideas that were behind the official narrative in Norway. But as importantly, there's a Danish author who's a friend of mine. His name is Mikkel Clair Nissen, who wrote a book called Manipulism and the Weapon of Guilt. Collectivism Exposed. I encourage you all to read it. What his findings were in that book, especially when he's a guy like me who lacks a lot of formal education, his findings were surprisingly revealing about the psychological mindset of collectivists. The book is described as the utmost controversial exposé and carefully detailed description of the awful emotional mind game that facilitates communism, socialism, fascism, and social liberalism known as collectivism. The book exposes Denmark, the supposed happiest nation on earth, for what it truly is, collectivism's biggest propaganda hoax. Danish author Mikkel Clair Nissen tells the hidden facts and realities of life in Denmark's democratic socialism that they never want you to know. When I started to wake up and complain in Norway, I remember someone contacted me and said, "You better cut that out. They're going to think you're insane and put you in the booby hatch." If it wasn't for Mikkel Clair Nissen's book, I think I would have been put in the booby hatch. But his book provided me with sufficient understanding that I could tolerate for the time remaining what I was seeing because I understood what it was. But here's the thing. I was dissatisfied, and my wife applied for a position abroad. And so in 2015, we moved here to Ottawa, where my wife found employment. What shocked me is that when I came home, I began to see the same collectivist woke mindset here in Canada. I mean, when we were in grade 13, we were made to read every appalling book on social collectivism and the dangers thereof, all the novels that were written by the Aldous Huxley and all the dystopian novels that were so famous in exposing the flaws of socialism. Oddly, in Orwell's case, he himself was a socialist, yet had written some very eloquent denouncing of socialism, which is why I spoke yesterday about the fact that they don't care if they're contradicting themselves. What we're seeing is something very, very odd, because it's some sort of mass formation. What is mass formation psychosis? Psychosis is when people lose some contact with reality. Mass formation psychosis is when a large part of society focuses attention to a leader or leaders or a series of events and their attention focuses on one small point or issue. Followers can be hypnotized and be led anywhere, regardless of data proving otherwise. Remember that, regardless of data proving otherwise. A key aspect of the phenomenon is that the people they identify as the leaders, the ones that can solve the problem or issue alone, they will follow that leader regardless of any new information or data. Furthermore, anybody who questions the leader's narrative are attacked and disregarded. There are 4 key elements, key components needed for an environment to experience a mass formation psychosis. Lack of social bonds or decoupling of societal connections. This is why they prevented us from seeing one another and why this postmodern government is constantly attacking the family unit. Lack of sense-making. Things just don't make sense. Free-floating anxiety. That's an anxiety that you can't pinpoint. And free-floating psychological discontent. Free-floating anxiety is a general sense of uneasiness that is not tied to any particular object or specific situation. Okay? When followers start to participate in a strategy to deal with the object of anxiety, new social bonds typically emerge, and people change from a highly aversive negative mental state in isolation to the exact opposite, to an extreme high level of contentedness that exists. So, let's reiterate again what pathological narcissism does in the light of this mass formation. Labeling. That's number 1. This accusing people of something that they're not at all guilty of, which is what we see the legacy media doing with Poilievre. You racist, bigot, misogynistic, homophobes, you. Displacing. Because narcissists feel a great deal of shame, they accuse others of being illegitimate, which is the other thing they've done now with Poilievre. They are accusing his leadership of the CPC as illegitimate, exaggerating. Narcissistic personality disorder is characterized by distorted views of self and others. So exaggeration is always applied when the narcissist is evaluating a situation or another person. Stonewalling. The narcissist will never back down. The social collectivist narcissist will never admit they're wrong. And they will stonewall you to the point that you will begin to doubt your own position. Scapegoating. The narcissist often blames another individual for the problems they themselves created. I said this to my wife in Norway. Your government is creating problems and then claims to be the only one that can solve the very problems they created. Of course, that's so self-evidently contradictory that I couldn't wrap my head around it. But today, we see that Norway, in spite of the fact that they had 2 referendums regarding the EU, joining the EU, they said "Nein" to the EU 2 times. And in spite of that, their government sold them out to the EU anyway. Even though they're not a member, they signed on board to all of the legal ramifications of joining without actually being a member. And now the price of hydro and fuel in Norway is so high that Norwegians are having to choose whether they're going to eat or drive or heat their home. In spite of the fact that their national oil fund, their sovereign wealth fund, is created from off-sea oil, which is the largest in the world, by the way. Intimidating is number 6. Narcissists are bullies. They live to try to intimidate you. So, of course, the only thing that we need to do when we're bullied is stand up to them. And remember that bullying is actually illegal in most places. Gaslighting. Narcissists will you can see something that happened right before their eyes and they will deny it happened. Like right now we know that the World Economic Forum is talking about the Great Reset and that there's a bug plant to feed people on bugs here in Canada that the government's helping to fund. And they're all saying, that's nonsense. That's a right-wing conspiracy theory, which is actually what I was told regarding cultural Marxism. I was told by a man who I've known since we were kids that I was delusional, that it was an alt-right conspiracy theory, in spite of the fact that the podcast I just did last week indicates clearly that at York University, they're teaching courses in cultural Marxism as a viable political theory. And of course, number 8, dehumanizing, the othering of the person, to render them inferior, unworthy, or evil because you don't agree with them. These are all typical tactics when mass formation has taken place. And it is a societal psychosis. So I'll just read a few quotes from Mikkel Clair Nissen's book, The Manipulism and Weapon of Guilt. The mental weapon of fear would undoubtedly be the quickest way to accomplish totalitarianism, which could be accomplished by spreading through terrorism, followed by disarmament, and ultimately a complete fascist military takeover. Threat and the fear of insecurity, i.e. crime and recession. How pertinent is this? Allow authorities quick access to exceptional power of authority. To disable capitalism's market freedom, the global warming issue proves to be a great tool to promote totalitarian collectivism. And that's a quote from Mikkel. Another quote. After all, Marxism is the world's newest religion. In fact, socialism has replaced religion in Denmark, and of course it's the same in Norway. Their national church is nothing but a tool of the state. Where less than 3% of the Danes practice religion. Instead of praising a higher power, Danes seek complete contentment through the entitlement benefits and narcissistic supply achieved through the collective human organism. Mikkel Clair Nissen. And the third quote, both previous examples resulted in Stockholm Syndrome, in which people factually defended their subjugators, though subconsciously they knew they were being abused. Irrational, but like the Danes, they still present themselves as joyful. And a quote from Johann Wolfgang von Goethe, none are more hopelessly enslaved than those who falsely believe they are free. So there are some thoughts from Mikkel and myself. Listen to yesterday's podcast and get involved in this debate. And know that those 8 things that I listed yesterday and glossed over again today are the inevitable way that people are going to react under the mass psychosis of this mass formation, where we're seeing unbelievably many Canadians marching in lockstep. Now, thank God, the truckers' protest and the many people I've met that exist on the liberty side, the constitutional side, the parliamentary oversight side, the side of the political spectrum that believes in the rule of law. There's certainly a great deal more of them in Canada, which Pierre Poilievre's enormous victory the other night, becoming leader of the Conservative Party, proves. But I'm still appalled that there's as many people as they are who are so blindly marching in lockstep It is our job to reveal to them the source of their mental pathogen. God bless you all. There's some things to think and pray about. Have a great Tuesday here on the 13th of September. God bless you.